Hello, how are you? Hope you're good. Whoop. For the month of March we had Girl Interrupted as the Book in a Jar book, and so here we are. If this is your first time hearing about this, I will link down the video that explains the Book in a Jar thingy, and I will also link down below the announcement for April's Book in a Jar, so go and check those out. Without further ado, just gonna roll into the book diary for Girl Interrupted. Hello darkness, my old friend. Hello Zeus, also my friend. Say hi. Of March. With the help of a lawyer, she obtained her 350-page file from the hospital. Girl Interrupted followed. Like, I'm already hooked. That's only the beginning of the book. I'm so intrigued. I'm so intrigued. Also a tiny bit afraid, but mostly intrigued. So you know how I said I'm gonna try and not film as much? Well, god damn it, first page and I'm already filming. How cool. We actually see her like file. One thing that really confused me is that it says established diagnosis of mental disorder is borderline personality, and I remember somebody commented that because when I introduced the book for the jar I said that it's about depression, but because it says so in the synopsis, so now I feel stupid. Sent to McLean Hospital to be treated for depression. It's there! Like, god damn it! Probably like actually start reading this. But I just cleared that out. It's not my fault, okay? Like most of the time it is, but not this time. Beginning at the very beginning, it says, people ask, how did you get in here? What they really want to know is if they are likely to end up in there as well. Too true. And I understand that the author was wanting to make an exaggeration, and it's all for the writing purposes. Girl feels the darkness coming over her head, and she knew at that point that she went crazy. I don't want to be a snowflake, but I do have a problem, sort of. Like, I get it. It's, you know, as I said, I don't want to be a snowflake, but because of the stigma when people refer to people with mental health issues as crazy, because what is crazy? Like, I need to actually look up. This is seriously a page in, but I need to look into the definition of crazy because I want to know what crazy is. Okay, well, crazy, the first meaning is mad, especially as manifested in wild or aggressive behavior, or extremely enthusiastic, or a mad person. What can be called crazy these days? Unless you call unstable and irrational, but then everyone can be... I don't know, I need to... Damn it, I knew this book is gonna be like that. So we have her at the doctor's appointment and she's being referred to the hospital. I love how this is written. It's very mundane. The chapter begins, you have a pimple, said the doctor. I'd hope nobody would notice. I think it says so much that the only thought that she had when she did indicate that she was afraid there briefly, but the only thought that she had when in the taxi being driven to the hospital, I was glad to be riding in a taxi instead of having to wait for the train. Seems like there is a daughter of 3 years. I'm having a bit of a difficulty reading the handwriting of the nurse because, you know, the handwriting of the nurse. We're followed by the letter, and it says that there's a history of suicidal attempts, and so far I'm really loving how quite raw this is. There's so many actual files in there, so you can get a good representation. You can pick and choose which information you want from those documents. I think it's a very interesting format. It's almost like, it's nothing like Illuminate, but you know what I mean, like with the file format of that is sort of like it. We learn about Polly, and oh my god, this book can get very triggering for some people. Polly is a woman that was in the hospital with the main character person. Really, I can't really say it's a character, can I? I assume it was a suicide attempt, like I assume. And she set herself on fire. And then we have this bit about the moment. So that's the moment where you either stand on top of a bridge or the roof, or you have a gun in your mouth and you understand that this is the moment. There is a whole world outside and this moment can stop all that. And she was just thinking about how it must have felt when she lit the match, when Polly did. She hit the point of no return, or she thought she did. And she speaks about how she seems a bit smug sometimes, as if she burned the frustration and the madness out of herself, and she was always supportive, and she's always a good presence around other people, though a bit smug. And then one day they just hear her crying, and she keeps screaming my face, and they say how foolish they were all. We might get out sometime, but she was locked up forever in that body. It must be so hard. If you hear someone talking, it's because Logan came back. Abandoned. It's so horrible to think that they still had the electroshock therapy thing. I like when she said that she at some point asked Lisa, how come you don't rush around and yell at night? And she says, I need rest too. Just because I don't sleep doesn't mean I don't rest. That was bizarre. As if like screaming and shouting is her job. And it was funny how they find entertainment, as in Lisa doesn't like watching TV, and she does this silly thing where she stands in front of people being like shouting at them, saying you're being a robot. She pretended that she's sort of cracked completely, and she's just collecting toilet paper so then she can wrap everything in it. Struck me hard is how she and Georgina were making caramels, and she poured caramelized sugar on her hands by accident, and she was the one screaming, and she was just so emotionally numb that she couldn't feel the pain or couldn't express the pain or enjoy the pain. Because sometimes when people are very, very depressed, you know how they use the coping mechanisms of cutting themselves and hurting themselves is because they prefer the physical pain, take their minds off their emotional pain. Just the fact that it must have hurt so much and she just didn't scream. The way this book is painting the picture of the mental institution is very, I would say, very Hollywood-like. Maybe that's why it was a movie as well, but this is how you would imagine it. It's very unnerving, calm, but the way she speaks about it is so bizarre. I obviously don't know if this is accurate, so I don't know. I think a lot of people had a issue with this book because it was so stereotypical, maybe, but the stereotypical is because it's represented like that in the movies, and it's really rarely an accurate representation of how it actually is in reality. But I don't know how it is in the reality, so if this is an accurate representation, then that's so bizarre. The way she writes these stories, it's like picking and choosing, and the wording is very unnerving and also funny. The train of thought, even here, like, I'm sure it's deliberate, but the train of thought jumps from one thing to another as if she cannot focus on one thing for long enough. That might be because of her personality disorder, or it might be so to portray the atmosphere in the hospital. I'm finding this very, very interesting. Somewhat disturbing though. It's not a light read at all, but it isn't a sad one either. It's just bizarre. Do you guys feel the same way? As in, like, how to feel about this? It's entertaining, but at the same time you feel like maybe I shouldn't be entertained by this. You know, when that guy that came to visit her asked, what are they doing to you here? And she said nothing. That sort of bugged me, like, clearly helping should have been the answer. It's really sad. I read to the point where they go for ice cream, basically. I don't think this is a book where things happen necessarily. They do, in the sense that people die and people kill themselves, but it's made to sound so casual and usual. I've been reading on Goodreads for some of the negative reviews, because I do that sometimes. I go on Goodreads and I check the 1-star reviews to see what sort of problems people are seeing in the book, so maybe I will see them as well. I don't always do that because sometimes I just don't want to be influenced by anyone else, but I wanted on this one because it's the topic that's really, it's a touchy one. It sort of made me angry because some of the comments literally said that, I will summarize this for you. This is about a rich white girl who had 5 minutes of stress where she probably just wasn't the center of attention, and so she popped in some pills and then went into the mental health institution, and now she's writing about it being all poetic. And I'm like, holy shit. How can someone say that? That's just so, that's beyond insensitive and is weird. Others say that they didn't connect with the characters, which is fair. And then other types of reviews mostly were because of the writing style, and I can see that some people would really not enjoy it because plot is not really, there isn't one. There's no plot. It is scattered all over the place, as I already mentioned. There's no structure, basically. Some comments though said that this book makes it sound as if writer doesn't believe in medicine, and they say that medication and the whole hospital thing is bullshit and that you should only try therapy and stuff like that. I haven't gotten that from the book so far, but maybe it'll be somewhere afterwards, because that's not really cool, but it's her opinion, so she's allowed to have one. So when I actually read this, I feel fine and comfortable, but then afterwards I have the I do have a little bit of anxiety reading this. It's an unsettling book, you know, but it's written in a really funny way and it's really lighthearted for what it is. This quote, Daisy had two passions, laxatives and chicken. It also said that Daisy's father was into her, and which was really disturbing. And the whole Daisy situation was very, very comical, and the whole chapter was very lighthearted, talking about, it was just funny, talking about shit and chickens and how she keeps those chickens, like the bones, and she's counting them until she gets out. And there was a bit where she said, where she was describing the apartment, one bedroom, L-shaped living room, eat-in chicken, you mean eat-in kitchen? That's what I said, asshole. Funny is, yeah, it all just goes very naturally and very suddenly. It just says, well, she killed herself, and then you sit there like, wait a minute, what? What did I just read? And they're not even shocked by it. They're so unfazed by it that all they can say was, how did she do it? But not in a way of like, oh, how did she do it? But in a legitimately curious way, because they know about the ways, and you know, they're just thinking which one she chose. Then there was a chapter about suicide, which got a bit deeper than anything before. This is where I think so far the most triggering material stemmed from. There was a whole chapter about what successful suicide requires, and how you're supposed to habituate to the idea, basically, of you being dead. You have to imagine whatever method you're thinking about taking your own life with, you have to imagine going through it until it doesn't phase you as much. It's very disturbing. But there was also a quote that I liked. It was, successful suicide demands good organization and a cool head, both of which are usually incompatible with a suicide state of mind. Which is really, really true. And there was another bit where she said, actually, it was only part of myself I wanted to kill, the part that wanted to kill herself, that dragged me into the suicide debate and made every window, kitchen implement, and subway station a rehearsal for tragedy. And she speaks briefly about her triggers as well, which is something that really unsettles her, is patterns, and it's actually quite a common thing. Same with some types of lights, like the daylight lights, unsettles a lot of people as well with anxiety. And I think with more obsessive, troublesome disorders, patterns are actually quite common as far as I know. It was my misfortune or salvation to be at all times perfectly conscious of my misperceptions of reality. I never believed anything I saw or aught I saw. Not only that, I correctly understood each new weird activity. It sort of brings back to what I just said at the very, very beginning of filming, when I googled the definition of crazy, which I never really done before. And this quote really expresses my concern with the term. Was insanity just a matter of dropping the act? When I was supposed to be awake, I was asleep. When I was supposed to speak, I was silent. When a pleasure offered itself to me, I avoided it. My hunger, my thirst, my loneliness and boredom and fear were all weapons aimed at my enemy, the world. They didn't matter a whit to the world, of course, and they tormented me, but I got a gruesome satisfaction from my sufferings. They proved my existence. All my integrity seems to lie in saying no. I think that's very common, but this is part of why people harm themselves. Sometimes you get so lost in your thoughts, and your thoughts sometimes bring you to weird places, and sometimes you just need a reminder that you're here, you know, that you're not lost in your mind and you're not lost in your brain, but you're physically here. It was interesting to see the system they had in the hospital for who's allowed where and what sort of like ranks are there for being allowed places and how many people you have to be escorted by. I am becoming sort of aware that my thoughts might not be extremely coherent here, and I am so sorry, editing Antaria, but this is probably not gonna be an easy one. Like, it's really easy to read though, I have to say it, and I have to give it to the book because it's really easy to read. Some of the negative reviews were saying that it didn't do anything for them. I think that this has lots of substance to it. So those are my thoughts on the first 55 pages or so of the book, and yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's really unique, let's say that. It's 25th of March, so long time no see. I've just read the chapter that's called Checks, and it's about checks. Almost sounds like if you weren't already on your edge after those checks, you would be. I understand that they used plastic utensils to eat, and it makes sense. That they had to use cardboard ones, it literally, gives me the uncomfortable shivers, you know, because oh my god, just think, oh, this is the bit where another Lisa joins, and they said we called her by her full name, Lisa Cody, to distinguish her from the real Lisa, who remains simply Lisa, like a queen. I thought that was hilarious. But another bit that really made me feel so extremely sad is when she said, when I got my diagnosis it didn't sound serious, but after a while it sounded more ominous than other people's. I imagine my character, because obviously sometimes they call it personality disorder and sometimes they call it a character disorder. I imagine my character is a plate or a shirt that has been manufactured incorrectly and was therefore useless. That just hit so many feels, especially because people definitely do things like that, you know, I'm broken, I am not normal, I shouldn't function like this, there's something wrong with me. Heartbreaking. At the end of the chapter where Lisa runs away again and then she sees Lisa Cody and she's like proud and she says she's a real junkie now, like, ow. This is sad. When you're in a place like this, there's also people who, like both of the Lisas, but mainly the main Lisa, she got sort of offended when the other one got diagnosed as a sociopath as well, because she wanted to be the only one. It was sort of a competition of who's more sociopathic, and it's insane. I suppose in a place like this, sometimes you might hold on to something that identifies you from other people because you might be afraid to lose yourself in general. Weird, because clearly this is what brought you there, but in a sense it's what's keeping you sane, which is just sheer boredom I think they have there, because we're smoking and Lisa was saying that she wants some fresh air and she made like the huge hassle with Valerie, who they seem to really like, and you know, they didn't even want the window open, but as they said, it passes the time, it must have been like 20 minutes or something. The fact that Lisa is not allowed outside, like, it really bothers me, because it's not supposed to be a prison really, but it sort of is, and it's wrong. I think I'm gonna call it a day, because I can't, it's one of those days where I really just can't focus on it, and I'm just, well, so I think I'm gonna go to bed and hopefully finish it tomorrow, because I need to. I got a little bit bored, but it might just be because I'm just so tired. I read a few chapters and nothing really happened, or I didn't have any thoughts on them, so I'm just gonna skip that. And the chapter that's called 1968, the whole chapter was a bit random. They were talking about the TV characters and blah blah blah. For the whole, well, I say the whole chapter, it's like 2 pages, but I didn't understand what was the point of this until the very last sentence, which was, we looked at him, a tiny dark man in chains on our TV screen, with the one thing we would always lack, credibility, and that just hit home so hard. If you've seen my mental health story video, you know that I actually flew to a different country to see a psychiatrist and be diagnosed because I didn't want anything on the record, because even though it is much better now than it was in 1968, it can still be held against you, so I didn't want to have a record, especially because I didn't know what it's gonna be, and generalized anxiety disorder is not actually that bad. I still didn't want to have it on my record. Sometimes people with mental health struggles, let's see, are seen as less reliable, and that's especially seen in work interviews, you know, these sort of things, and that just really hit home because they really are treated as if they really lack credibility, and it's just, and then, oh my god, this was really scary in the sense that I sort of understood what she meant, and I'm hoping I'm not the only one, so please tell me if I'm not. You know, when she suffers an episode of depersonalization and she thinks that she doesn't have any bones, and it just starts so randomly. She just has a thought that, oh, my hand looks like it belongs to a monkey, and then she just starts poking it, and you can see the train of thought there really, really clearly, even to the extent that you sort of get her, like you sort of like want her to see the bones and feel the bones, because at least I sort of get it. Like, I sometimes get a very mild version of that, like I would never actually act upon it. It was a really scary scene. It just escalated out of nowhere, and I think it was very strongly written as well, because it literally showed you the escalation and sort of like a rationalization of why she's doing what she's doing and why she feels that she might just be skin and there might not be any bones. And even scarier was the end of the chapter where she says she felt safe now, and what she really meant is that she thinks, so I'm really crazy now. and I can stay here because she's afraid to be released. I feel like most of them are, because as they mentioned before, everything is done for them and some things they're not allowed to do. They don't know how to, I don't know, at this point I really don't know how long she's been there, but people stay there for ages and don't have to cook, they can't even open their windows, they don't have to schedule a work or, you know, anything like that. I was also thinking yesterday, which might sound a little bit sad, but obviously not a great situation to be in, but I also felt like they have friends there, they have this group that they can rely on, and maybe they call each other crazy, but they are friends, and that's more than some people have in outside. I don't necessarily feel like I have a very close group of friends here. It would be scary to leave. It's like moving country, you know, because you can visit but you can never see each other properly, and they live together. They're basically, you know, best friends, and not only is it scary to like go back to the normal way, but you're also sort of sacrificing a huge part of your life, which is, you know, friends. I'm not surprised that she's afraid of being released. I finished it last night, but something came up and I couldn't actually film it, so this is a day later. I just came back from work and I went from like not having that many to like, where was that page? I'll show you. To this in one page. Oh no. Look at it. Have you ever been hospitalized for mental illness? Oh no, I just loved Belmont so much I decided to move to 115 Mill Street. Like, it is a stupid question. Just in general, in the book, when I was reading the negative comments, some of them said that they didn't feel connected to the characters, that they didn't really feel invested in them. I think that's a mind focus, but yeah, I think it is a really good representation of her personality, the way she writes the characters. I think it was intentional. You were not supposed to feel that sort of engagement in the characters and people's stories because she didn't. And the way she wrote sometimes about things that are gonna happen in the future, when she was speaking about that friend that is gonna die a horrible death 2 years in the future, I almost feel like the author wants to shock us. I feel like she really likes the shock factor because it did nothing to the story. It wasn't a necessary detail to mention, yet she did, and she does that quite a lot. I think she likes to shock people. I feel like it's something she wants to do. As a reader, I do appreciate it because it does make you turn the page. Then we have my hands down favorite chapter in the book, and that was Mind versus Body. I found that she mentioned a lot of great points, and then I sometimes found that she mentioned things that are fairly outdated at the moment, so I'm gonna go through them with you now. See, I was going through a mental health first aid training in my current work. There was one woman who just completely, and it was a fair question, but like it broke something inside me when she asked that. She said, because we went on and on and on about CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and once the person brought up medication, the woman was so just uncertain. She said, if your mind controls your mental health, how come there's a pill for it? I'm not saying that it's not common knowledge, but but especially for someone who studied the subject, that killed something in me. It's the whole misconception of mental illness in one sentence. Why is there a pill for it? Because it's a chemical imbalance, because it's something in your brain. And yes, CBT and all the therapies control it to an extent. I think it's very well established at the moment that it really isn't mind versus brain. It's mind and brain. It's the same thing. They coexist. It's not one or the other. Your brain is your mind and your mind is your brain, and it's an organ, and you know, and as all the other organs, they might have problems and they might have something wrong with it. Mind. It's full of claims and reasons. You're a little depressed because of all the stress at work, it says. It never says you're a little depressed because your serotonin levels has dropped. Sometimes its interpretations are not credible, as when you cut your finger and it starts yelling, you're gonna die. I think anxious people will relate. Sometimes its claims are unlikely, as when it says 25 chocolate chip cookies would be the perfect dinner. I relate. I think this chapter onwards, it almost felt like a different sort of book, and an improved sort of book. This chapter onwards is what I actually was expecting this book to be when I started it. Not to say that I didn't like previous bits. Now I want to bring something up that I didn't particularly like about this whole... You can see these bits coming up throughout the book, and it's not the first time that she's mentioning it, is the whole Freudian approach. I understand that this is the way she was treated, and it's a really old-fashioned way of treating it. I want to just highlight how annoying that is. He was more of a philosopher, and there's so much more to mental illness than his model, and it annoys me to no end when people instantly think about Freud when they think about psychologists, because it's just such a... I don't know how to explain it. It's like don't get offended that I'm just like trying to find an analogy for it that sort of explains what I mean. Freud to psychologist is like Justin Bieber to music, that sort of thing. It's probably not the best analogy, but it's the one that I can come up with now, so just go with it. The other thing that I didn't particularly like that she did, which again I think was her way of just bringing that shock factor in the play, because she does that a lot, but she would refer to people with mental illness, even such as just personality disorder and stuff, as crazy quite a lot. And to be fair, that doesn't help anyone. My camera died, so it's almost dark now. I really enjoyed the analogy of the trains moving, because we all know the feeling, well at least most of us really know the feeling, and I thought it was a great way to illustrate the point. And she was really right, it's not the same as an optical illusion, because with optical illusion you have more control, because even with that vase face illusion, if you try hard, you can switch between what you see, and delusions and phobias and stuff like that you really can't. With enough training though you can, and this is where the CBT all comes in, exposure therapy. And I thought it was a great example of the feeling, and I haven't actually come across anything like it before, so great. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that chapter, and I did find extremely odd she wasn't told her diagnosis at the time. What did really strike me is that nobody really sat her down and well, as much as I understood, nobody really sat down and explained to her what they think she might be suffering from. That would never happen now. And this is where we get to the a bit more philosophical and like ethic problems. So she does mention that homosexuality was a mental disorder prior to her writing this book, and that is correct. Homosexuality was actually fairly recently taken out of that, but it's just a change in society, and I feel they do got rid of things, homosexuality for instance. Until recently, quite a few of my friends would have found themselves documented in that book along with me. Well, they got out of the book and I didn't. I think that was extremely like maybe my favorite quote from this. Not to say that I agree, I believe there's always gonna be some flexibility. Times change, and homosexuality is quite different from a personality disorder, although you can still argue about that, and those would be valid arguments. Again, this is exactly why I had to Google crazy at the very beginning of me reading this, and who is to say who's crazy? But I think it's very important to distinguish between these things. Homosexuality, yes, it was in the book, but the main criteria for the disorder is that it must inflict your daily life and restrict you from living your life as you would and as you did beforehand. Homosexuality is not that. You are born homosexual. Sexuality is a spectrum, it's not a category. Generally speaking, it's not homosexuality itself that's gonna cause a person to be unhappy with his current situation and maybe interfere with their normal functioning. It's gonna be the society's views on it, which is completely different from depression and schizophrenia and you name it, any other mental disorder in here, because that in itself is something that prohibits you from living your normal life. Homosexuality, however, is completely different. I thought it was a brilliant point to bring up, but I thought it's a poor example when it comes to the actuality of it and how real that comparison is. And then she goes like picking out the certain paragraphs from the diagnostic manual and just comparing it to normal population, well, normal population, undiagnosed population maybe, and saying that is quite normal. Yes, it is. And every single point that she pointed out, they are normal. That is exactly why in the diagnostic manual, they always say that the person has to have a certain number of those together as separate entities, they are normal. As a package, they contribute to the hinderness of normal well-being. So that is exactly the point, and I feel like she's a bit rebellious. I know it's maybe not a correct word, but I feel like she just wants to disprove it. She wants to say that everyone's crazy, and it's selective reporting is what she's doing. She's picking and choosing points that would help her to make the case. She took parts out that are important. It's not just having a bad mood or being irritable and being prone to anger management issues. It's not just that, it's the combination what makes a disorder. It's the same thing as saying that generalized anxiety disorder is just a prolonged period of worry. Yes, but that's not it. You can't just say like that would be an anxious person. It wouldn't be a person with generalized anxiety disorder. She has sort of a quirky type of writing. I feel like she will include those details that will sort of make you stop for a second and be like, wait, what? You know, like the goat had bananas. And I did stop and I giggled, and I find it interesting, not interesting, but I found it really entertaining to read, and it definitely did make it maybe more interesting. But I can see why some people wouldn't like it, because it could feel like it's a bit trying too hard or just being really quirky. I didn't mind this on this occasion, but usually these sort of things would annoy me, but I really like that sort of kind of humor. So those are all my thoughts, and apparently I had quite a few at the very end there. For such a tiny book, I think this was a really thought-provoking. I really thoroughly enjoyed this. I don't think it's gonna be a 5-star book, because those for me are the ones that I would pick up again and read. I think I got everything that I could have gotten from this. I am definitely 100% happy that I picked up and I read it. I think it is an important read. It wasn't as educational as I expected. I'm actually gonna even say it wasn't even as extreme as I was expecting it. It's not necessarily a bad thing though. Please, please, please let me know if you had similar thoughts to me, or if you had other thoughts you want to talk about. I'm really interested. I'm super interested to hear your thoughts. Tell me what your favorite part was in the book. Were there any bits that you didn't like? And also please tell me if you didn't like the book in general and why, because I'm really interested in. I have nothing against that. Like, different people are gonna like different books, and sometimes one person is gonna like one book if they read it that particular month, and the other month, if you would read the same book, you would hate it, you know? You never freaking know. It's the mind and the brain thing. I also just wanted to really quickly mention that I have created a Goodreads group. I felt there was a tiny bit of lack of interaction between us all, so not just me and you, because I get this when I upload this video, but you guys with each other, because I just thought that nobody really, like, you can't really speak on Instagram, and on the videos you can only speak at the end of the month. I wanted something, and yeah, so I created that. I will link that down below for sure, so please come and join if you want to join us this month or next month. But you know, you can always just be in that group and not participate if you don't wanna. But yeah, if you want to join us, please come. We're all very friendly there. I think that's everything. I'm gonna pass you on to the Has-Been Tire now, because I pre-filmed it. So those were my thoughts for Book in a Jar for the month of March and Girl Interrupted. What did you think about this? Feel free to be as spoilery as you want, because I assume nobody's watching this if they haven't read the book, because spoilers everywhere. So do chat with me in the comments. This is the part that I'm most excited about, because I love chatting with people. I love hearing what they think. Even if you don't really want to talk with me, just let me know what you thought. So yeah, thanks so much for watching again. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more of this, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!